Hello everybody and welcome to the Zentangle Project Pack series. This is Julie and this lesson is part of Project Pack number 12. This will help us celebrate our annual 12 Days of Zentangle, and this year's theme for 2020 is Zentangle Renaissance. We will be working with the materials found in our Project Pack number 12 envelopes, and you can purchase a project pack from some certified Zentangle teachers or from Zentangle.com. If you don't have the project pack, we encourage you to follow along these lessons with whatever materials you might have at home. We always recommend watching the introduction to the series first, but the rest of the project pack number 12 videos can be viewed in any order. Today we are going to be working with a brown Micron 01, a black Micron 01, a Jelly Roll 10. We have a graphite pencil and a white charcoal pencil, some tortillons. We've got our gold paint and the paintbrush as well. And we're going to be working on a Renaissance 3Z tile. So I was very excited for this project pack because I hadn't worked on a 3Z tile in a little while. So it was fun to explore the different options available here. I'm going to begin with my brown Micron 01. And our tangle today that we're mainly going to focus on one tangle, but add some other embellishments and fragments into it. But it's the Tangle Sand Swirl. And this tangle was designed by Carrie H. And it's really a fun tangle. And we're going to do a little bit of a tangulation. We're going to work a little bit bigger than maybe you might be used to with Sand Swirl. But I'm going to start here, right almost in one of the corners. And I'm going to draw an arc that ends in a big orb. And then I'm going to aura this arc. All the way around the orb. And I'm going to do that at least 2 more times. Remembering to turn our tile, especially as we go around like that. And I'm going to aura it one last time, but this aura is going to be a little bit wider than the ones I've been drawing. And there you have your first swirl. I'm going to turn my tile, and I'm going to add another one. Going a little bit of a different direction, but I'm going to start down here. I'm going to draw my arc, ending in an orb. And I believe in the traditional sand swirl, these orbs are a lot smaller, but for our tile today, we're going to be working a little bit larger. And then we're going to add our auras, 2 or 3, whichever you feel comfortable with. And then again, for this final aura, it's going to be a little bit bigger than the ones I've already put down. So we have our second swirl. I'm going to add another one on this side. Get an arc ending in an orb. I'm going to add our auras. I was so looking forward to this project pack because I missed 11. I was out for a little bit and I didn't get to do a video. And I really missed you guys, so I'm excited to be back here with you. And again, our final aura is going to be a little bit wider than the rest of them. Now I'm going to go back and add a few smaller swirls, but I'm going to keep this bottom area right around here empty. But in these big crevices here, I guess big crevices is kind of an oxymoron. In these big spaces here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some smaller swirls, just to fill that space. But again, leaving my final aura a little bit wider. And then when you have these really small spaces, I'm just going to fill them in with my brown ink. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I get this space, I'm going to put another swirl. Again, filling in these little spaces. And go fill in right here. No mistakes, so we're just going to fill that in a little bit more. And then right here, I'm going to add another little swirl. I'm going to go right there. I know I just said I was leaving this whole space blank, but I want to kind of fill in here and connect these two. So I'm just going to add a little swirl. But again, that final aura is a little bit thicker, and we'll go ahead and fill in this area with our ink. Taking your time to just enjoy the process of filling in. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then one more little swirl here. So there you have all your sand swirls down. We're going to put our cap on our brown marker. And then we're going to pick up a black Micron 01. And we're going to go, I'm going to start with my first swirl that I put down. And this outside aura that we did a little bit thicker than our other auras, a little bit wider. We're going to be putting some black bands across and filling those in. And leaving about a space the same size as this band and putting another one. I just recently wrote a blog for the Zentangle blog about Renaissance tiles, and kind of when I first started working with them, I was frustrated and I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand that unlike the black or the white tiles, you really are working in a lot of layers, and you have to be patient and trust the process of it. And when I was preparing for this video, I had this kind of vision in my head of what I wanted to do, and I started putting it on paper, and I didn't really like it. And I pushed the tile to the side and grabbed a blank one, and then I heard this little voice inside my head, it's usually Molly's voice when it appears, saying, trust the process. So I did. I grabbed that tile that I had shoved to the side, and I kept going on it, adding the layers of the graphite and the white charcoal and the black and the brown. And I was done. It was, not only was it what I envisioned in my head, it was better. And so you really do just have to trust the process. And the result is quite beautiful. So now that you have that outside aura with all your bands, you're going to do the same thing on all of your swirls. And there, once you have all of your auras filled with these bands, kind of in a Marsu fashion, we're now going to focus on the inside of these orbs. And we're going to fill these with fragments. And so I'm going to show you some different options. You can choose anything that speaks to you. If you have an idea you want to go with, it's really up to you. You can do them all the same. You can do them different. But in this first one I'm going to do is a fragment inspired by one of the fragments in the primer that's for a triangle reticula, but we are going to kind of use it in a circular form. And so we're going to start by drawing a little orb in the middle there. And then we're going to draw a line connecting the orb to the edge. Again here, and one over here, separating the orb into thirds. And then you're going to draw a little band that slightly arcs on one side of your line and another one over here. So kind of like in the tangle bales, how you add these little rice shapes. We're going to do that on each of these lines. And then we're going to aura this whole shape. And the fragment that inspired this is fragment H16 in the primer on page 120. I'm going to put the cap on my black pen. I'm going to pick up the brown 01 again. And I'm going to aura the inside of this black line again. And then I'm going to fill that space with ink. Remembering when you're filling in that this paper is a little softer than you might be used to. You just need a light touch. So there we have our first fragment. I'm putting the cap on my brown pen. And I'm picking up my black one again. In this next orb, I'm going to use a fragment that is E25 in the primer. I'm going to put a little orb in the middle here. And then I'm going to take off and land on the outer edge of this orb. Take off and land. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Turning my tile as I go. And then I'm going to go back to where my line meets the orb, and I'm going to add a little weight to these lines. Just adding a little bit of ink. Fan it out a little bit. So there's one option. In this orb, I'm going to fill it with kind of the tangle well. So I'm going to draw a little orb in the middle. And coming from the outside of the orb, I'm going to draw an arc in. I'm going to turn my tile. I'm going to do this splitting the orb into 3 parts. So very similar to this fragment, just not as many. We're only going to do 3. Instead of weighting them, I'm going to go back and I'm going to aura these lines until the space is filled. Turn my tile, aura. Turning my tile, and I'm going to aura. So there's another option. And then I'm going to fill these little orbs, and I think I'm going to use this fragment in the little ones, or maybe we'll see how, whatever speaks to you. Remember, take off and land. I'm just using a very light touch in these little spaces because I don't want them to completely fill with ink, but I still want to give them a little bit of weight. You can also, another option is with my brown pen. On these ones on the bottom here, I'm just going to fill them in with ink. So you have lots of options for the inside of your orbs, and it's whatever speaks to you. This is your tile. There you go. I'm going to put the cap on my pen. I'm going to pick up my jelly roll now. Again, working all these layers. I'm going to turn my tile over and just kind of warm up my jelly roll because I haven't used it today. Turn my tile back over. And in the middle of all of these areas, I'm just going to add a little white dot. Fill in those little orbs that I drew. It just gives it a little pop. You can put your jelly roll to the side. So now we're going to start shading. And like I keep saying, we're working in layers. And I always like to start with just a little bit of shading because you can always add to it. I'm going to begin with my graphite pencil. And I'm going to start, I'm going to go back to my swirl. And I'm going to add a little, just a little bit of graphite to the outside of this aura. And then I'm going to add just a little bit to the inside. I'm leaving that middle area blank. You don't want to fill your whole aura with graphite. And again, you don't need much. I'm skipping over the black areas because we don't need to add more darkness there. And I don't want to muddy up my tile. So you just need a little bit. And we're just going to do that to start for all of the spirals. And now I'm going to still working with my graphite. I'm going to go inside of all these orbs. And I'm going to put some graphite around the edge of each fragment, the outside. And then I'm going to also put some around the white jelly roll dot I put in. I'm going to do that same thing for each of them. But you don't need much, especially on these little ones. The ones I just colored in brown, I'm not going to really add any graphite there. And then finally, I'm going to start with the biggest swirl I have, the first one I put down. And I'm going to add some graphite here. So starting at the orb all the way down to give it the impression that this part is above this. It's being tucked under, and also that it is above the other swirls. So kind of think of how you would shade Hollabaugh, the ones on top first. We're going to do that same thing here. You can also shade this side of the swirl as well. But you want to bring the ones you drew on top to focus up, and then push the ones on the bottom down to give it some dimension. And remember, you can always go back and add more graphite. So then we're going to take our white charcoal, and if you've been working with your white charcoal a lot, I would maybe give it a sharpen, make sure you have a good tip on it for this. But we're going to add a highlight in the middle of all of these bands. I'm going to do that to each one. And you can see how as we start to add these layers, everything really pops. Everything pops right off the paper, and that's what's so cool about the Renaissance. You can work with all of these different tones. And I am being a little heavy-handed with my white charcoal as I put it down, but I'm trying to keep a thin line because I don't want to muddy everything up. And then inside of these fragments here, we're just going to go around like this for each one. I'm going to pick up my tortillon for my graphite. And I'm going to go back and soften down where I put all the graphite. But again, and I know I've said this a few times, but this paper is a lot softer than the white or the black tile. So you're going to want to be light with it so you're not scratching up the paper and doesn't begin to pill. But if you just have a light touch, you'll get the effect that you want. And then we'll go into our fragments, and again, just need a light touch on the outside and then inside. And then we're going to take our tortillon for the white charcoal and do the same thing, but I don't really want to spread it around too much. I just want to soften it a little bit. Maybe in this one, I'm gonna. And then you can look at it and you can always kind of tell where you might want some more graphite. So I want this to be a little bit darker. This orb's quite large, so I have a little bit more room to play around with the shadows. So I'm going to go back and add some more shading to this orb. Maybe this one too. And the next step is I'm going to pick up my brown micron Okay, we're going to add another layer. I'm going to go back to the lines that are heavily shaded, and I'm going to redefine those lines to make them a little bit bolder. So if you want to watch me, like this first line here, I'm going to go over it again. Around the orb. Making it a little darker because it kind of got lost a little bit in all our shading. And so to really make it pop, I'm going to be redefining those lines. And I'm going to do the outside aura as well. Expand wherever we have heavily shaded. And this is just another example of trusting the process, because you can't go back and redefine these lines until you've shaded. So it's just all about working in these layers. Really creating all this dimension. Add a little graphite here. There is a lot going on in this tile, so as you're going around, if you see you missed shading somewhere, just go and add it. One thing I'm going to add here, I'm going to pick up my jelly roll again. I'm going to go back, I'm going to redefine the middle of these fragments. And then I'm also going to go back to these bands, and I'm going to just lightly, just like brushing the paper with the jelly roll. And it just gives it a little bit of brightness. If you are getting some of the paper, your pen's getting muddy, you can just always go to the back and clean it off. So you can put your jelly roll back. And we are almost done, but just to give this a little bit more pizzazz, if you will, we're going to add some of our gold paint to this bottom section. So you want to grab your gold paint and your brush, and you just want a little bit of water in there to start, because we want this gold to go on a little bit thick, so you don't want too much water, just a little bit to really activate this. But like I said, we want a lot of gold, and we're just going to add it to the bottom of this tile. And just a tad more water to get a little bit more going to finish this tile off. And there, we've finished a 3Z tile. So you do have 6 3Z tiles in your pack, and I used 3 of them really for this project. So I tangled them all in a very similar way. This one's I've done already, and the gold paint has dried. And we're creating this little 3D shape. So you can see I've already done all these ones, and to make this shape, you want to take your tile once the paint has dried. So the one we just did, I'm going to set aside. This one, the paint's already dry. I'm going to create a crease, folding it in half. I'm not going to make it too hard of a crease. I just want to bend it like so. And then on the sides here, I'm going to add some double-sided tape. That's what I have handy, some ATG, but you can, glue sticks will work fine, whatever you have handy. But I'm just going to add some adhesive to each side here. And we're going to be sticking the sides together. So you can see I've already put these two together here. And then this third one just is going to fit right in there. And I'm going to fit them together and hold it for a minute. Just have them stick together. As you can see, you have this little 3D object. If you wanted to put a ribbon through here, you could, and a little bell at the bottom, you could hang them somewhere. We have all these different options, and it really gives it a fun little, you could put place cards. You could leave this open and stick a place card in there and have them on your dining room table if you're having dinner with your family. There's lots of little options for these little stands. You can see the swirls really give it a fun look. So if you have some more 3Zs, feel free to repeat this little project. You can use a different reticula and you can use different fragment inside all your orbs on each side. That's what I did here. I was exploring with some different options. Or you could mix them all up like that. I love the gold. I think it really gives it a fun little pop on the bottom. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for following along. This has been so much fun. I hope you are enjoying Project Pack number 12, and I can't wait to see what you guys create. Have fun.